I'm Sanook and this is Elora, a RuneScape-inspired online open-world browser game that I'm making as a solo developer. This is the fourth part in my devlog series, and as a recap of everything we've done so far, we first discussed the initial gameplay loop, created a rough single-player prototype in GameMaker, created our game server in Rust, and last devlog we had brought the game into 3D on the web. When I made that first devlog 2 months ago, I was hesitant in talking about all my plans without having proof that I could pull it off. At the stage we are now, and with the tech demo that I've made, I think I'm happy to share my full vision of the game and its features. I think having this level of transparency in design is something I would watch myself, and it would be interesting to see how my ideas will change from this devlog into the future. This video won't have any progress, and it will just be me talking about my plans. So I'm going to break it up into these sections. What is The Hook? It's an online multiplayer, open world resource gathering game that values meaningful progression. Once the game starts to come together, I can further refine it, but for now, we'll just leave it like this. So why the browser? I feel so strongly that there's a future in this space. I grew up with miniclip and playing Flash games, and with new technology, I think some games will come back to the web. There's something about the accessibility of it. Being able to type in a URL and play without a download is so convenient. And the game that I'm making is meant for that second monitor. I'm not trying to replace the game you want to play, but this will be there for that downtime. Waiting for a friend to join, in queue for a game, or on the side while you watch something else. Pick up and put down as you please with no penalties. I want you to be able to close it as soon as you're busy and open it to the exact place you were. A different kind of MMO. As a game dev, this is a bit strange, but honestly, I haven't played that many games. But the ones that I have played, I played a lot of. I tried a lot of MMOs in my childhood, but there was a challenge. Either I couldn't get a membership and the free-to-play was just unplayable, or my computer just couldn't handle it. But I still loved the genre and always found something I could play for hours. From RuneScape, MapleStory, Minecraft MMOs like Windcraft or Skyblock, and even Black Desert Online, where I had to wait an hour to load into the game before I could even start playing. All these different experiences shaped the game I want to create. Especially in these games, I was always drawn to the laid-back life scaling parts of the game. There was something about the leveling and progression that scratched an itch for me, especially earning your way up and creating items that are actually useful. But it always felt like it was secondary from the combat, and just used to make money for gear. But there were people who actually enjoyed it. I mean, not everyone, but I could say that I liked it. So I want to tap into that slow-paced, life-skilling part of the game, and there won't be any traditional combat. I also played a lot of Terraria and modded Minecraft as a kid, with equivalent exchange and industrial craft, and I loved those multi-layered crafting trees and long list of resources that you needed to progress with. That's something I want, but I don't think I want to make it too complicated, and I won't be touching automation at all. This is somewhat unintuitive for an MMO, but I've always played them solo. I heard the term passive interaction, and it's the exact feeling that I enjoy. I like being around others in the game, doing the same task or simply passing them by on a path, but I never really wanted to actively interact with them in group content. To really break down what I enjoy specifically about passive interactions, I'll give an example from RuneScape. Seeing players around the game really gives you that feeling of Sonder. Seeing what gear they have tells you so much about the player. Do they have fashionscape and care about their looks? Do they have bested slot and only care about efficiency? Are they new to the game and have all this mismatching gear? And honestly, one of my favorite features is looking people up on the high scores in RuneLite. You can see their priorities. What do they like? Do they only train Slayer or just fishing? Are they a min-maxer? Are they a completionist? What stage of the game are they? What have they achieved? You can also compare how they are to you. Have a goal to work towards. Share a struggle that you know you've both overcome, like 77 runecrafting. Relate to players at the start of their journey and see the unique path that they are taking. None of this is from actively interacting. I don't need to do group content with them or have a whole conversation. Those things are nice, but they aren't what I personally play an MMO for. I love it for its progression and shared experience, and I think this is a lot different to a majority of MMO players and devs, but I'm willing to test whether there's an audience similar to me. Tech-wise, I want to have regional servers for less input lag, but I want to have all players from every server visible to each other. So even if 5 players play and they're all spread out, the game will be less dead. I have a vague idea on how I can do this, but I'll need to test it. What I really value is meaningful progression and really earning those achievements. Therefore, the game will be all Iron Man rules, which means no player trading. But don't worry, I still want to promote a sort of playing together, which I'll get into later. I think this decision has a lot of pros and cons, but the main benefits are that it guides players to experience a broader scope of the game. Players aren't incentivized to do the best moneymaker and skip other content. Each player truly builds their own account, and as a solo developer, it will be easier to not have to maintain and balance a player-run economy. Now let's talk about the gameplay. It will mostly be about resource gathering and crafting better tools. I'll be taking certain elements from idle games, but you'll still need to keep the game open to progress. There will be leveling for your skills for that number go up satisfaction, and the current skills that I'm thinking about are the most common, so mining, fishing, and woodcutting. Each resource will come from a node, so logs from trees, and collecting it will be very low intensity and semi-AFK, so it's perfect for a second monitor. Before crafting with these materials, they first need to be refined at a refining station. There will be a select few refining stations in the starting area, so this acts like a community place where players of all stages of the game come to refine. I need to think more about how I'm going to handle the crafting, which is probably the most important system, so I don't want to get into it until I've properly thought it out. Now, let's talk about the controls. It is a browser game, so I'm constricting myself to only the mouse. Even sitting up to use the keyboard is too much, and it takes away from the slow-paced and laid-back feel of the game. I'm really honing in on simplicity, so the player will only be able to do 2 things, move and interact. The players will move towards their click, but it won't pathfind, meaning that if you accidentally brush against the wall, it will slow you down. Interacting will be like chopping a tree in RuneScape, and depending on what you're interacting with, it will change the tool. First of all, I think there can be depth in this system, and I'm not trying to make the most mechanically difficult game. In RuneScape, during the Tombs of Amasket, there is one specific section during the Warden fight that inspired me and showed me how there can be skill expression from simplicity. Specifically, the red skulls that you need to clear within a certain time frame. Something about the responsiveness and movement feels really clean, and that's something that I want to recreate in my game. This isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I think it proves that I have room to design more complex and satisfying interactions with only these 2 mechanics. Another part I want to emphasize is that I don't want the game to look confusing. If you look at someone playing, you should be able to understand exactly what's going on. I want to lower that skill floor and get rid of as much complexity as possible so that anyone that wants to play won't be intimidated or lost. As I mentioned before, there is no player trading, but even if it's mostly solo, I really want to get rid of the idea of crashing. Players should never be punished for having anyone near them, but I do want them to be able to spread out and not gather near the most efficiently placed nodes. I have some ideas on how I want the resource nodes to work, but that's a work in progress. But I do have one idea that really stuck out, and this is the type of group content that I'm leaning towards. If players are all gathering their own nodes, and suddenly a random event spawns, it will make one of the nodes glow. This is my first idea for what an event could be, but everyone that wants to participate would start gathering that glowing node. At a random time, anyone that was gathering at that moment will be taken to the same instance. In this instance, a glowing crystal will be slowly moving around and changing scattered nodes in its radius. You can follow the crystal and mine these changed rock nodes for a special material that you can use in crafting. This only lasts a short duration, and once the event is over, players can just go back to doing their own thing. This is just a small example of creating that passive interaction. Art style and world building. For the art style of the game, I want it to be heavily stylized and intentional. I've created a 3D pixel art shader that still needs a lot of work, but I like the direction of. The main thing I want from the art is to be consistent and pleasing to the eye. The game will be open world and handcrafted by me. I don't want the world to be big, so I'll try to create something that's small but dense with a lot of attention to detail. I'll be heavily focusing on nature and honestly, I'm not that interested in having many man-made objects. I really love how people world build through an environment. So in my game, there's not going to be an explicit narrative, but the environment will still show a bit of lore. The game will somewhat be a sandbox. If you load into the game as a new player, I want to give you the ability to walk to the other side of the world and just explore. You won't have the level to interact with the nodes over there, but I think that's perfectly fine. If someone wants to just walk around the world that I've made, that's enough for me. And that goes for skills as well. If you only care about fishing and that's what you enjoy, then just do that. Going back to world building, there's a YouTuber that I really want to mimic in their process. His name is BOO, and what I really like about him is his approach in treating his world like a painting. Everything is very picturesque and serves to enhance the angles. I love how he builds for moments. When you turn a corner or go over a hill, the landscape he curates frames everything from that angle. That's why I don't want to go the procedural route, because there isn't any intention. I have a lot to design when it comes to the camera of the game and how I want players to view the scene, but I do want that essence of his builds. And just being intentional with the compositions, lighting, and color will create something visually striking. And especially for a game that isn't mechanically deep, the visuals are so important. You wouldn't want something ugly on a second monitor all the time. Obviously, I have a long way to go in terms of art fundamentals, but even for creating games, you can always take notes from other mediums. Immersion is really important, and that's why I want to limit the UI as much as possible. I really hate having menus up non-stop, but I know I can't get rid of them all. Therefore, I'll have limited menus and try to integrate as much as I can into the world. Let's say I have an anvil. Instead of creating a whole menu that covers the screen, I could have a carousel on the top that you can scroll and select which item you want to make. I really want to remove as much clutter as possible so that you can just enjoy the scene. I'm thinking that if you idle for a certain amount of time, the UI will disappear and it will be sort of a wallpaper until you move your mouse again. I'm not sure how this would feel in practice, but it's just an idea. This might be a controversial design decision, but I don't want there to be a chat. It takes up so much of the screen, and I know that there's so many benefits of having it, especially in an MMO, but I think it can be removed. I might add simple communication like emotes or reactions, but other than that, nothing. Honestly, I think players will be creative within these constraints, and it will feel like more of a universal interaction without the language. It also removes the load off me needing to moderate. Speaking of universal language, I really hate text in general. I'm a fan of having as much iconography as possible. I know that there's a balance between the two, but if I can convey as much information from an image, then I would rather that. This would keep the amount of language as low as possible and help me if I wanted to localize the game into multiple languages. Next, I want to talk about music and sound. This is one of the most important parts of the game, as it sets the atmosphere. I want to borrow from RuneScape again by having regional music. So certain areas will have their own track and really set the mood. I feel like the music you listen to as you experience something helps you remember it, and that's why I would want to hire someone for music. In terms of what the player will look like, I haven't decided yet, but I have this temporary model that I rigged myself so it's ready for animation. Now let's talk about the roadmap. Even when I've tried to keep the scope small, the project is pretty ambitious still. So the point of the roadmap is to be as direct as possible in getting something playable. Therefore, I can start receiving feedback from playtesting. The map will definitely change, but having a rough direction is good, and I don't want to work on anything that doesn't serve that goal. The first stage is finalizing the mechanics and game logic on a single player version of the game. Of course, I'll be designing with networking in mind, but not having to worry about it straight away will make it easier on me. In this stage, I'll handle animations, moving, interacting with nodes, so basically recreating the GameMaker prototype I made before. I'll also need to figure out the camera and how to load the world dynamically to make sure that I can support open world. I'll work a little on game feel, but I won't go into polish mode just yet. Now for the second stage, which is implementing multiplayer. This will be a lot of behind the scenes work with no visual progress, but it will be really important. Here, I want to add client-side prediction and responsiveness. I'll need to plan out how I'm going to handle loading all the 3D models and how I'm going to update all the players' information. I'll also want to start the logging process of game actions and how I handle errors on the server's side. This will be great to start early and help me a lot with debugging later down the track. Stage 3 is going to be the actual game's website and handling player accounts. So that's registering and logging in and just making sure that everything is secure. After that, I need to create a database to save all the players' data. Here, I'll work on the player's inventory and save it. I'll need to support multiple servers using the same database safely, which I'll need to look into. By this stage, I should have decided on the direction I want for crafting and refining, so I'll add the foundations of that and make sure that it's modular for any future features that I want. As for skills, I'm just going to work on one for now, and I'll need to figure out the random event system and client-side events. From there, I'll polish all that I have and try to have something presentable. I think that's enough of a roadmap for now, as there's so much to do. As for these devlogs, I want them to be a bit smaller in scope for what I cover per devlog. Therefore, I can keep you guys more up to date. I also want to be more conceptual and less technical with what I explain. It'll be more about my design decisions, as I don't really enjoy being too technical in a video format. But I think that's all the current plans I have for my game. So if you would like to keep up to date with the project, you can subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.